Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Monday Movie Club. Today is our 10th episode, and joining us to talk about Midsommar for this 10th episode is my very first guest, Rosie Dean.
Yo!
Rosie, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for
First
having me
first
back.
guest and first returning guest.
I know.
Yeah. So, Rosie, you've been on the podcast before, so you kind of know how this goes. Um, So I'm going to skip over the first two questions of like first movie and everything because people that have seen this know you already.
Yeah.
The first question I'm going to go to is why did you want to talk about Midsommar?
It just so happened to match my outfit for today, so I was like, yeah, I guess we can talk about that movie. No, it's my favorite movie ever. It's what introduced me to Florence Pugh, who's now my favorite actor ever in the world. I love her. I really love horror. Horror has always been my favorite genre, but I like, I love all horror, but I specifically have an appreciation for thrillery horror that like gets in your head and is like scary because you are confused and don't know what's going on, and that's exactly what this movie is. And I think the acting is incredible. I think the cinematography is incredible, and I just really liked it. And I saw it in theaters by myself.
Oh.
Because nobody would go with me.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was like, well, I'm gonna go, and then I sat in between two very lovely people, and we all like.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say in a movie that kind of has themes of isolation versus community, to be isolated while watching it must have been an experience.
It certainly was. Yes.
Yeah. I think for this movie, I've only done this once before, and it was for Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I think for pretty much the whole conversation, I'm going to give a blanket spoiler warning once we start like really talking about it, because I think it's hard to talk about this movie without spoiling things because the ending and everything that goes into it is so tied into the messaging.
I agree.
But before we jump into that, do you want to give a quick spoiler-free synopsis for people at home that are thinking about maybe watching this movie?
I would love to. So, Danny, a lovely girl in her mid-20s, is going through a strange period in her life. She has a family tragedy that leaves her confused and alone and unsure of what to do. So she turns to her boyfriend, Christian, for comfort. And they get whisked away by Pele to a very peculiar commune where they experience the Midsummer Festival, and a lot of interesting things happen, and she has to grapple with the loss that she's dealing with, the relationship that she's having trouble in, and ultimately finding where she belongs and discovering the true meaning of family.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, but it's also scary. It's very scary too.
Yes, it is. I appreciate how every now and then you would come across something that is pivotal to pitching the movie, but you can't spoil it. So it'd be like a very interesting commune.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so with that out of the way, I think just general spoiler tag for the rest of this film. It's kind of going to be interesting to talk about this movie. I mean, of all the movies that I've watched so far, I've taken the most notes on this one. I have like 4 pages of just scribbling. Let's start simple first, though. Let's start simple, not too heady. I love the cast of this movie.
Yeah, me too.
I love the cat. Florence Pugh, right? That's how you pronounce the last name. Is really one of the few main characters. It's her and the guy who plays Pele were the only two that I didn't know from a previous property that I love. Because Christian he's the brother from Sing Street. Like, okay, best character in Sing Street, bring him on over here. You have Chidi from The Good Place, So you're winning there. And then the best character from Netflix is the Bandersnatch.
Oh,
Oh, what were you gonna say?
he's also in Maze Runner.
Oh, sorry,
But
I've never seen Maze Runner.
Bandersnatch too, yeah.
Yeah, there's something that Christian does near the top of the movie that is one of the shittier things to do, which is they're getting in a tiff about whether or not they're going to go to Sweden, or whether or not he's going to go to Sweden. And
One
he's like,
shot?
I'm just going to leave.
Are you talking about the one shot?
Yeah, it's the where she comes in and she's like, why didn't you tell me about this? And then it
Yeah,
moves.
and he's in the mirror and
Yeah,
she's there and then the camera. Oh, it's so good.
it's so good. He but his tactic there is one that is like commonly regarded by a lot of like therapists and couples therapists as like an emotionally abusive or manipulative way to behave, which is when you're confronted with something to say I'm just leaving, to just leave the conversation. And to even see it play out in her, where she then takes the blame and she apologizes to him.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've seen a couple of the deleted scenes. I wanted to watch the extended version today, but only the normal one was on Amazon Prime, and I was like,
Yep.
Um,
Same here.
yeah. But I did see one deleted scene where he just like gaslights her some more. I think it's right after the sacrifice of the two old people.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's like another just one of those arguments.
You know what's funny though? I think there's only one time in the movie where Christian comes off as, in my opinion, he comes off as understanding and open-minded, which is when he defends that practice. Like, obviously, we know by the end of the movie that this culture has its own issues, like every culture does, but his point of like, okay, but if this culture saw what we did to our old people, they would think that's cruel.
Yeah.
He's like, think of it in that way. And that's the only time Christian really made some sense to me.
Yeah, I think that was a valid point. But I
Yeah.
think that kind of goes to just sum up the whole movie, which is just it's all just cultural differences, and what's so crazy to the people coming in is so normal to the people who are there. And I don't know. I find that really interesting.
Because there's a lot of that in the movie.
Yeah.
Even
Not
early on.
thing that I love about Ari Aster is like not a single frame is wasted. Like there is something in every single set and every single shot. Like that's what I think is so cool about him. Even in the artwork in the house and just the little things that are around her apartment, everything kind of means something, and it's very, very cool.
His directing style reminds me of a horror version of Edgar Wright, even in the way that he transitions from scene to scene. Like there's that moment where she's about to have the panic attack and is going to go into the bathroom and then opens the door, closes it, and she's in the airplane bathroom. Like that's something that Edgar Wright would 100% do in his movies.
There's also a lot of fade from one scene to another that reminds me so much of The Shining.
Yeah.
There's that one where it fades from the fire burning the bodies to Danny sitting by herself, and like there's fire around her as the shift.
He superimposes a lot of images.
Things like that, are very, very cool.
I think that's kind of a good way to start segueing into some of the more like open-ended stuff, things that are a little more up for interpretation in this movie. Even what the movie is trying to say. Like there's a lot going on in the movie, right? And you can make an argument that all the things that I would list are intentionally a part of the movie. But I think some of it is a little more up for interpretation, like even the ending of the movie with her smile.
Yeah.
That can be read in a lot of, I was wondering like if you had an opinion on why you think she smiles at the end.
Oh gosh. Yeah, so this kind of goes into something that I've been thinking about a lot, which is my favorite kind of movie, or my favorite structure for a movie, is a movie that starts calm and ends in like absolute chaos. But as the chaos ensues, you as a viewer feel more at peace. And I felt the same thing with the Joker. At the beginning, he's not out there killing people and doing all this awful stuff, but that's when you as the viewer feel the most pain for him and the most discomfort. And then by the end, when everybody's cheering for him because he does all this awful stuff and he's this murderer, you feel like, oh my gosh, like that's amazing. And like I'm so happy for him. He looks so happy. And the same thing here, right? So she's just killed her boyfriend. And for some reason, I was so relieved and happy. And I think it says something about our nature as people, the fact that we can attach ourselves to a protagonist so much to the point where when they get their relief, even if it's a horrible thing that's going on that caused them to get that, we feel happy too. And I genuinely think that that's like her feeling at peace. Same way, like, I don't know, maybe because I'm a girl and I recently went through a breakup, it made me feel so good at the end. I genuinely think she's smiling because she's found her family and she's, you know, she feels like she finally understands what it is to be supported and to be held. Like when Patrick says, do you feel held by him? It kind of gets feeling that all of her life she's never really been held in that way. And even physically, like they're holding her while she's having that panic attack. Like they're holding her that entire time at the end when they're walking her to and from after blessing the crops. Like they're all holding her when she wins May Queen. Like physically and metaphorically, I think she finally feels held.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with all of that. But for me, I think I had a slightly different emotional experience myself with the ending of the movie, especially my second time around.
Tell me.
I kind of mentioned this earlier, but to me, this was a movie about a cult indoctrination. Everything about her life and everything that Pele and the community does throughout the movie are like the classic steps that happen for a place like Jonestown or a thing like the Manson family. You have someone who is feeling isolated, right? Even the movie opens and constantly references like this idea of like isolation in the modern world versus retreating to something older and more akin to nature. Someone who is isolated is recently going through a trauma, and then slowly but surely they isolate her and start to like gaslight her and drug her, which is also a big part of cult indoctrinations, until you don't know which way is up and what is good. Constantly reassuring you, making you feel like this is a part of a family, and entirely giving up your own individual personality, including her clothing, until she is completely within their world and has lost all sense of identity to being a part of a community. And so her smile, for me, I still don't know if I want to read it one way or the other, which is I agree with everything you said with her smile, but either one way, when she turns around and sees the screaming and then turns to the thing and sees what they're screaming at, one way is she fully recognizes what's happened, but she's okay because she's kind of with her own. Because the way that the entire community is shrieking and crying, their body language and their facial expressions is akin to hers through the whole movie before she met them. So it could be like I'm with my own now. Or my other way is she's been completely indoctrinated. That is her smiling, and she now views everything that's happened as good and right.
Honestly, K-Dog, ¿por qué no los dos?
Yeah.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
I like the point about them mirroring her emotion too. I mean, that's a theme throughout for sure. She's felt so alone, and then here she is in this cult where everybody literally like mirrors your pain.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting, and it's just because they are all one, and when one person feels pain, so does everybody else. But I do have questions and stuff about that, something along those lines. But I don't know if you want to get to my questions at the end, or?
Oh no, go now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So something that I found really interesting was obviously she deals with anxiety
Yeah.
throughout. And at the beginning, she takes Ativan and different drugs to like help her calm down, like prescribed drugs. And
Take
then
as needed.
throughout, she takes like the hallucinogenics. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about the like the meaning of just like drug use in general throughout the film, and like what it does to the protagonist's field of understanding. And then my other thing was the anxiety attacks that she has throughout are mirrored. When are they mirrored? There was a point where I noticed it. I think it was when they were playing Skin the Fool. They were all
Another instance of foreshadowing, by the way.
Yeah. They were dancing in the line and they were going like like this or something, and it literally sounded exactly like a panic attack that she had had as they were going along. They were doing this like breathing and like they were making a noise of some kind over and over and over again, and it literally mirrored her panic attack so eerily. But she was kind of enjoying it, and that was her first sense of like feeling at peace and at home, because it came right after she walked through that sun and everything was bright and happy. And so I just think that there's an interesting parallel between like her panic attacks and the noises that everybody makes.
She was still a little afraid at that point, though. She was still a little afraid of the sense of community.
Yeah, but she had just walked into like that new, you know, and it was just visually very positive looking.
On the drug use aspect of it, there are two different forms of control. It's both a version, you know, one being a form of control that a doctor gave to her, and it's a take as needed pill. It says it, and we see that. So she is, it's a solo thing, again, kind of alone, a part of my thing, my problem, and I will take it as I need. And we also see that it doesn't super duper help her a lot. And then the drug use in the camp is something communal. You know, you can't even take it at separate times, otherwise, you know, you'll experience it differently. So I think that's one aspect of it, is they show the difference again in how one drug use is a form of control for yourself and one is a form of control for a community. Because
that's cool.
Yeah, they also use it to manipulate people's worldview. You know, even not just her, but Christian too. They're like, this will open you to the influence. And we also see every time that she takes these hallucinogenic, world-altering drugs, she seems to be coming closer and closer to nature. You know, we see grass growing out of her hand and then growing onto her feet.
Oh, something else, along those lines. She has trouble breathing. Like that comes with anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. And the one of the first things he says when they're like tripping is like, even the trees breathe. Like everything is breathing. And then the more they take the drugs throughout, and everything kind of like opens and closes and breathes. Yeah. I feel like kind of represents that she's like finally able to breathe as well, which is cool.
Yeah, she has a slow journey throughout, and I think there's like 3 different ways that I can at least think of to view this movie, like 3 different lenses to view this movie under, and you can tell me if you think one isn't as strong as the others, or if there's one that I'm missing. But like one that I read about, I didn't think of this on one on my own, but I read about viewing this movie as like a fairy tale, and not Disney fairy tale, like actual Grimm's fairy tale. Yeah. Her being like the princess, and Christian being like the monster that she has to escape, and Pele being like the prince to save her sort of situation in a really twisted, effed up way, because Pele is emotionally manipulative and a creep. The other lens being a shift away from modern sensibilities towards religion, whether that be nihilism or Christianity,
Yeah, I thought about that too.
towards a more either like Norse or pagan philosophy, something much more nature bound. And then the third one being something that we've talked a lot about, being from isolation to community, that one being the more like culty draw. Although you can also view the religion one as a more culty draw.
Yeah, I think they're all definitely valid. The first one is super interesting to me because something I noticed this time around was that really awkward long kiss right after she's crowned, where Pele like kisses, and it
Oh,
reminded me so much of like when the prince kisses Snow White and she kind of like wakes up and it's her happy ending. It kind of felt like that, but really twisted and weird. But immediately after that, she gets lifted up onto this thing and she like leads the way to the, I don't know, the thing. And it was just, oh, she leads the way to the feast. And
yeah,
it was just really trippy. And it reminded me of like, yeah, a twisted fairy tale for sure.
yeah.
Especially because a lot of fairy tales begin with the parents dying.
They do. They absolutely do. Trapped, isolated, and alone. Somebody needs to find something and find that community or your Pele. Although again, Pele. I remember the first time I was watching the movie. The beginning, it's like, oh, maybe Pele will be like the nice one. And on the outward surface, he's very nice. But, especially watching the second time, I see the way that he's like subtly, emotionally manipulating Danny and creating these. And even when he like helps Christian, he makes sure that like she sees him and she's fully aware that Pele did it. So even when Christian does something, Pele gets the credit.
Yeah, I think he did that on purpose too.
Yeah. Do you think that Pele's parents were previous sacrifices?
Okay, so here's the thing about that. They said that this big feast happens every 90 years.
90 years, yeah.
So no, not if those sacrifices only come once every 90 years. But this is the thing that confuses me because how would everyone in the community know how it's all working and be so nonchalant about all of these sacrifices? Like, I understand that they've been raised seeing people die and whatever, but this event, if this is the only one they're going to get in their lifetime, would be a very big deal, and they would all be reacting in, I feel like, a very different way. So part of me feels like these sacrifices do happen every year, and it's just the feast, like literally just the feast that happens once every 90.
Something different happens every 90. Like clearly there's some reference to every 90 years, which I agree with your point because they only lived to 72, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So no one has lived through this. There are some people who will never live to this. However, we know that every year a May Queen is crowned. We know that every year old people that are 72 years old go through that ceremony. I forget what it's called, but they jump. And then there's reference to Pele's parents dying in a fire.
And he says it like so many times. He's like, I know, Danny, my parents, they burned up in a fire. My parents, they burned up. I know. Danny, my parents burned up in a fire. Like, they really want you to know.
So I wonder if it's every 90 years they bring in outsiders like that. If like that's the every 90 years thing.
I wonder. But also, to add on to that point, the temple looked very new. And if it were every 90 years, it would be old.
Yeah.
They would have been waiting 90 years to put people in it. but it does look like something that they had recently built, which means either they waited 90 years to build it or they make a new one every year for this ceremony. Yeah.
The one other like just thing that caught my eye or ear, actually, this caught my ear. Is Pele a product of incest? Because they say that they don't really do that, except they specifically do that to get people who are unclouded, right? They are unclouded. They have specific things to be like prophets or other such things. At the end of the movie, when Pele is wearing his stuff, that's the same language they used to describe his achievements. They say that he had unclouded intuition.
It's an interesting question. I don't know. I don't think so, but it's funny that they would use the same language. You're right. They did say that. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he's one of those ones where they were like, sometimes we let cousins do it.
Yeah.
Like a half inbred kind of thing. I don't know. That is very interesting.
Yeah, because it was such a specific word that they used at the time to describe deliberate and intentional products of incest.
Yeah.
That when I heard it again, it just struck my ear like, huh.
Something else, now that we're on the topic of that, sorry if we want to get to a point that...
No, I honestly, this movie has so much to unpack and so many different lenses to interpret it under.
I know.
That I think almost one of the best ways to do this movie's service is to just kind of dip your toe into the many things it has.
Okay, so I'm gonna
dip the toe.
So the guy that is inbred and their prophet, their current prophet, we only see him a few times. He doesn't go to any of the ceremonies. He doesn't. Yeah. We only see him like very, very rarely outside, and then the other times we see him, he's in his bed or whatever. And something I noticed this time around is the window in the is it the, what do they call it? The church where the thing is kept?
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called, but yeah, it's where he like spends his days painting. Yeah.
So the window where the thing is kept, where they have the sex and where the book is kept and everything, is closed. There's drapes over it for the entire movie, except for when Chidi is murdered and Josh is murdered.
You know, after I saw the movie the first time, I only referred to him as Chidi.
And when Christian is having sex, those are the only two times that those drapes are open. Mm-hmm. And part of me feels like his room is on the other side of that window, and they want him like overseeing these ceremonies or something. Well,
there was that superimposition. They had that weird thing that I was like, wait, why are we seeing his face right now? Do you remember that?
In the beginning?
No. I'm talking about when the same like superimposition, that the phase that you were talking about, where you used to have two images at the same time. His face was brought up like during that scene. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but I remember just
at the very end of the
at the very end of that.
Yeah, he's in his bed looking at what would look like he was looking towards what was happening, and he's just sitting there like this. And I feel like he's watching through the window. And I feel like for some reason they don't let him like out, but they keep him in there and he has to watch certain things, which I find very strange.
It's probably a part of making him a prophet, you know, like, oh, he has to experience things and then not have it be clouded by, I don't remember how they referred to it, like clouded by normal thought or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It was just weird. Like, why would they choose to open them that night? How would they know that he would need to watch? Maybe with someone on the other side of it, like looking at him. I don't know. It was just interesting.
Yeah, but he like hid these things throughout the movie, the same way that like Hereditary will probably be interpreted and reinterpreted throughout the years. And what's also really cool is that this, like, because it takes place in Sweden in the middle of the summer, he managed to make a really scary movie happen in broad daylight. Nothing scary happens at night, really, except for one scene.
He says the one thing that was so frustrating was because they had to film during this while the sun was out. They used literally whatever time the sun was bright enough to film, but because of that, sometimes they'd be filming one scene for an entire span of the daylight that day would give them, and so the shadows are just constantly changing throughout
Oh,
all of the scenes because the sun is in like a different spot. And he's like, that's our biggest continuity problem, but fortunately nobody has said anything about it yet.
I don't think anybody's gonna give them shit for that, really.
It's a disorienting movie, so we can just blame it on the drugs.
One thing that I did want to bring up, you kind of reminded me, but how messed up is what they do to their own people at the end. They tell them, you will not feel fear or pain. Here you go. And that's probably something that the whole community is aware of that they do, so that people are more willing to step up. They're like, oh, no, they give you a thing that makes you not feel pain or fear. So when we do it, we give ourselves willingly and it's peaceful. And it doesn't do anything. It's just a lie that this community perpetuates to make you feel okay with that. That's a really horrifying and important moment, because I think if you leave that step out, there's a reading of the movie that says that this community is kind of wholesome and a utopia, and the outsiders are messing it up, and they kind of deserved their death. But that moment tells you, no, they're messed up too.
Yeah, totally. That's so valid. Oh my gosh, that's such a good point. It's so important because it kind of shows you that it's like a little bit of a bigger. It represents like the whole, which is this whole cult just a lie? Like, interesting. Very interesting.
Very interesting. Well, Rosie, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing another.
I have one more
wonderful.
question.
You have one more question?
I have another question.
Okay. Forget that. You give me. All right. Question.
It's one more question that I want to talk about. Okay. You know how they go?
Yeah, which is weird because I would do it the inverse myself.
Florence Pugh does the inverse.
She does?
Yes. So everybody goes, and she goes, and she like blows out. And I think that's so weird because everybody sucks in, which I feel like is like sucking in like your life and like whatever. She goes like that the entire time, like every time she does it. And it's so weird. And then like there's this one point where she's been doing this like the whole time that they like try to make her do it. But there's this one part where she has that panic attack or something. And she walks to the temple and she like can't breathe. And then she just goes like that and it cuts. And I don't know if that means anything, but she's like finally breathing in. And all the other times she does it, she goes, and it's so weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's likely because, I mean, personally, I always thought one of the things about the was kind of that it was weird and disorienting because that's not what we do, right? And they try to paint this culture as like the great fears of any nihilistic American. Anybody who doesn't believe in rituals or doesn't believe in this kind of lifestyle, they're like, no, technology. Even the opening of the movie, we see the beautiful woods, right, in summertime, and then it hard cuts to icy, cold, separated civilization. But what we would do naturally, personally, is breathe in and then out, like let it go, get it out of there, right? So they paint them as the inverse. And I kind of agree with something that you just said, where they're more taking things in.
Yeah.
But again, to paint them as your exact opposite. And so that moment for her, if she is breathing in our way, the first time that she breathes in nature is probably a big turning point for her in kind of letting that past go. Just like at the end of the movie, you see kind of the last elements of her life burning. She is completely free.
and
Yeah.
she lost her mom, her dad, and her sister, and the triangle collapses.
Yeah. It burns up in flames.
I mean,
Christian's gone. No part of her past is there, and she is completely a part of this commune, cult, community, whatever you want to call it.
you're saying your family now, your family.
Yeah, aren't you a part of our family now? E.
And the first time she's there and somebody says the word family, Mark says, "You guys are like my family, like for real, like my family." And she freaks out and has that panic attack.
Yeah.
Then when they say it at the end, she's like, "Yeah, yeah," you know. So
Yeah.
that's it, her journey.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done now. You can say the goodbye.
Rosie, thank you so much for coming on again and sharing another amazing movie with us.
Yeah. Thank you for accommodating our chat around my outfit. That was really nice of you.
Yeah, I mean, it was really last second. She was like, "Oh, let's do this movie." I was like, "Oh, I'll have to rewatch it." That's why I'm wearing the outfit. For those of you watching at home, let us know below what you thought of Midsommar, and if you've seen both Midsommar and Hereditary, which you prefer over the others. They share a lot, but they also have a lot separate.
I like Midsommar better personally. What's your favorite?
I think I like Midsommar more as well. I appreciate a movie being scary in the daytime, so I don't have to be afraid of when I turn my lights out. For those of you at home, just know that going forward, Monday Movie Club is going to become a monthly series as I move into making new series to sort of diversify and give people a bunch of other fun things to watch on the channel.
Kieran, is this season 1 finale?
This is kind of the season 1 finale, yes.
Well, I'm honored to be a part of the season 1 finale.
I felt like it was right to bring it full circle, you know? First guest of season 1 is the final guest of season 1. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I'll see you in a month. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.